the Galactic Concordat had declared war on humanity. It wasn't just any war, it was extermination. The bureaucratic, ancient empires had long tolerated humanity's rise as a minor species, but when Terran innovation began disrupting the economic monopolies of the core worlds, patience ran out. A coalition of 1,000 species voted for humanity's extinction. The fleet of the Concordat was a force beyond reckoning, hundreds of thousands of warships, each backed by centuries of technological advancements. Against them, humanity had only a handful of battle-worn fleets and a stubborn refusal to surrender. ###The Siege of Sol. The attack came swiftly. The combined armada of the Concordat surrounded the Sol system, cutting off every trade route, every line of communication. Humanity was cornered in its home system, and its colonies burned across the stars. The message from the Concordat was clear: surrender and be absorbed, or resist and be erased. But surrender was never an option. The United Terran Defense, UTD, a ragtag coalition of Earth's surviving military forces, knew they couldn't win in a direct confrontation. The enemy's fleet was simply too vast. Instead, they prepared for asymmetric warfare on a scale never seen before. Humanity had always been the underdog, and they thrived when forced into impossible situations. Admiral Elias Carter, commander of Earth's last major fleet, surveyed the incoming Concordat forces. His expression was unreadable, but those who knew him saw the steel in his eyes. "They think they've already won," he said grimly. "Let's prove them wrong." ###A strategy born from desperation. The UTD devised an unconventional plan, a combination of cyber warfare, guerrilla tactics, and psychological manipulation. They knew that many species within the Concordat weren't fully united. Old rivalries simmered beneath the surface, and the bureaucracy of the Concordat made them slow to react. Phase 1: The Disruption. Earth's best hackers infiltrated the enemy's networks, feeding misinformation, altering targeting coordinates, and even triggering accidental friendly fire incidents among the Concordat forces. Ships vanished from their own fleet's radar. Planetary defense codes were subtly rewritten. Conflicting orders sowed confusion. **** The mighty Concordat armada, though powerful, was like a beast too large to react quickly. Phase 2: The Ghost Fleet. With their remaining warships, the UTD orchestrated a brilliant deception. They scattered their fleet, making it seem as though Earth's forces were retreating. Then, using prototype cloaking technology and repurposed asteroid fields, they created the illusion of an even larger hidden fleet waiting in ambush. Phase 3: The Unthinkable. While the Concordat focused on the illusionary threat, humanity's greatest gamble took shape: Project Revenant. If humanity couldn't beat the Concordat in open battle, they would cripple the enemy from within. Sleeper agents, cybernetic infiltrators, and even defectors embedded deep within the Concordat's infrastructure prepared to launch the largest sabotage operation in galactic history. As the Concordat fleet closed in on Earth, high-ranking Concordat officers began receiving contradictory battle orders. Supply lines mysteriously shut down. Key warships suffered catastrophic failures as their reactors mysteriously overloaded. And then, just as the first wave prepared for planetary bombardment, the unexpected happened. A Concordat dreadnought turned its guns on its own fleet. The bridge officers of the Concordat flagship, the Vigilance Eternal, watched in horror as a dozen of their most powerful warships opened fire on their own allies. Chaos erupted as entire battalions of alien soldiers revolted inside their own ships. Admiral Carter received the report with a rare smirk. "That's the thing about monolithic empires," he murmured, watching the confusion unfold. "They always forget how to deal with chaos." But even as the first cracks formed in the Concordat's overwhelming force, Carter knew the battle was far from won. Humanity had only bought time, and time was the one thing they needed most. To be continued in Part 2, The War of the Shadows. The illusion of the Ghost Fleet had shaken the Concordat, and the unexpected betrayal within their own ranks threw their assault into disarray. But the Galactic Concordat was vast, its resources nearly infinite. Even with the chaos unfolding, the war machine pressed forward. Humanity had bought time, but time alone wouldn't be enough. Admiral Elias Carter stood aboard the bridge of the T.S. Valiant, Earth's last surviving Titan-class battleship, staring at the incoming enemy reinforcements. The Concordat had momentarily faltered, but their sheer numbers meant that the tide would inevitably turn against humanity. Carter turned to his officers, his voice steady. Phase 4 begins now. ####the sleeper agents awaken. Long before the war started, humanity had known this day might come. Over the decades, human diplomats, scientists, and traders had worked their way deep into the heart of the Concordat's infrastructure. Some had defected. Some had infiltrated. And others had been waiting. When the activation signal was sent, chaos erupted across 1,000 Concordat-controlled worlds. Key hyperspace relay stations suffered random malfunctions, cutting off critical supply chains. High-ranking officials within the Concordat's War Council were found assassinated in their own chambers, the cause, unknown human operatives. Entire battalions of artificial intelligence combat units, originally programmed by humans, suddenly turned on their alien masters. Even within the mighty Concordat armada, certain captains refused to engage in genocide, turning their ships against their own fleets. What had once been a unified force of oppression now struggled with fractures spreading from within. #### A dangerous game. Despite these victories, Earth still stood on the edge of annihilation. The enemy fleet was still in position, their orbital bombardment weapons primed. Carter knew they couldn't hold out forever. The UTD's unconventional tactics had rattled the Concordat, but fear could only buy so much time. That was when Earth's greatest intelligence officer, Commander Samara Voss, presented a plan so reckless that even Carter hesitated. We go after their leadership. The Concordat's ruling council operated from Celestra Prime, a planet so well guarded that no known force had ever breached its defenses. But Samara had a different idea. She pointed to a Concordat dreadnought that had turned against its fleet earlier, the Vigilance Eternal. Its captain, an alien officer named Zale Thera, had long harbored doubts about the Concordat's methods. If they could convince Zale Thera to aid them, they might have a chance to infiltrate the heart of the enemy's empire. #### The impossible heist begins. As Earth's defenses continued to hold, barely, Carter, Voss, and a small team of elite operatives prepared to embark on the most dangerous mission in human history. They would board the Vigilance Eternal, hijack its stealth transport, and use it to infiltrate Celestra Prime. If they succeeded, they wouldn't just sabotage the Concordat's leadership. They would bring the entire empire to its knees. To be continued in Part 3, Infiltrating the Unbreakable Fortress. The plan was insanity. Celestra Prime was the most secure planet in the known galaxy, a fortress world protected by overlapping planetary shields, automated defense arrays, and a fleet that made even Earth's last stand seem insignificant. No army had ever landed there uninvited. No rebellion had ever succeeded. But humanity had never played by the rules. On board the Vigilance Eternal, Admiral Elias Carter and Commander Samara Voss stood before the alien captain, Zale Thera, whose 4 reptilian eyes flicked between them, considering the impossible request. A Concordat officer betraying the Empire wasn't unheard of, ***, but actively helping humanity, ***, that was a death sentence. Zale Thera let out a slow, guttural growl. Even if I get you inside, you won't survive. Celestra Prime is a tomb for those who don't belong. Carter leaned forward. Maybe. But if we pull this off, there won't be a Concordat left to hunt us. A long silence. Then, finally, Zale Thera gave a sharp nod. Then let's burn the stars. #### A Trojan horse in the dark. With the Vigilance Eternal already marked as compromised, the group knew they couldn't simply fly into Celestra's airspace. But a Concordat stealth transport, used for high-ranking officials, was another matter. Samara's team of hackers worked tirelessly, fabricating a high-priority clearance code, one that would mark them as an elite strike team returning from Earth. If they were questioned, they had one shot to bluff their way through. The plan had one problem: they needed to make it look real. So, with the help of Zaelthera's crew, they staged a fake battle. The Vigilance Eternal fired at the stolen stealth transport, forcing the ship into an emergency jump toward Celestra Prime. Concordat forces intercepted them, but their forged orders and battle damage sold the deception perfectly. As their ship descended through Celestra's dense atmosphere, Carter exhaled. They were in. #### the heart of the enemy. Celestra Prime was nothing like Earth. Towering obsidian spires stretched into the sky, each one humming with energy that pulsed like veins in a living organism. The air was dense, rich with chemicals that made it difficult for unmodified humans to breathe. Samara and her team moved through the compound in stolen Concordat armor, their human faces hidden behind alien masks. Their goal: the Concordat High Council's security vault, a central hub where classified data, war strategies, and emergency protocols were stored. If they could breach it, they could disrupt the Empire's command structure and expose its greatest weaknesses. But just as they reached the entrance, the unexpected happened. Human infiltrators detected. The alarms blared. The deception was over. The mission had just turned into a fight for survival. #### the battle within the fortress. Concordat enforcers swarmed the hallways, biomechanical warriors twice the size of a man, their armor capable of shrugging off most handheld weapons. The human team had prepared for this, but they hadn't expected a response this fast. Carter, leading from the front, fired a plasma charge into an enemy's visor, watching it explode in a flash of molten light. Samara sliced through the Concordat security systems, scrambling the internal cameras and locking down blast doors to buy them time. Zaelthera fought beside them, his multi-jointed limbs striking with lethal precision. "You humans are insane," he growled, slashing through an enemy soldier. "I respect that." But they were outnumbered, and the Council's elite guards were already converging. Their escape routes were sealing shut. And then, Samara found something they hadn't expected in the secured files. Her eyes widened as she scanned the data. "Carter, the Concordat's already collapsing." The files revealed that dozens of species under Concordat rule had begun outright rebellions after the chaos of Earth's resistance. The sleeper agent sabotage had done more than just disrupt supply lines, it had lit the fires of revolution across the galaxy. Humanity wasn't fighting alone anymore. Carter's grim expression turned into a rare smirk. "Then let's finish what we started." With the Council's secrets in their hands and the Concordat's empire already cracking, the mission changed. They weren't just here to escape. They were here to end the war. To be continued in Part 4, The Fall of Titans. The revelation had changed everything. Humanity had been fighting for survival, believing themselves alone against an unstoppable empire. But now? Now they had proof that the Concordat was already rotting from the inside. The uprisings had begun. The war was no longer just humanity versus the Concordat, ****, it was an empire-wide revolution, ****. Admiral Carter, Commander Samara Voss, and the renegade Concordat Captain Zaelthera stood in the burning remains of the security vault, their stolen data disks glowing in the low red light of emergency sirens. The Concordat's elite forces were closing in. Escape was no longer an option. Carter holstered his weapon and turned to Zaelthera. "We need to send this to every species in the galaxy. Right now." Zaelthera's reptilian eyes narrowed. "The Council controls all transmissions on Celestra Prime. There's only one way to broadcast across the entire network." Samara already knew what he was going to say. "The Spire. #### the climb to the Spire." The Galactic Spire was the heart of Concordat control, a monolithic tower stretching miles into the sky, its upper levels housing the core relay, the most powerful communication hub in the known universe. Every order, every decree, every fleet movement passed through its encrypted channels. If they could override it, they wouldn't just expose the Council's secrets. They would send an unfiltered, undeniable call to rebellion across the entire galaxy. But getting there would be suicide. The spire was heavily fortified, its corridors guarded by the Concordat's most elite warriors, post-organic enforcers fused with cybernetic enhancements that made them stronger, faster, and impervious to most weapons. Zaelthera studied Carter and his team. "You're asking me to help you take down the most powerful government in the galaxy with only a handful of people." Carter smirked. "We've done more with less. #### the siege of the spire." They moved fast. Disguised in stolen Concordat armor, they advanced through security checkpoints, using Zaelthera's clearance codes to bypass initial scans. But once they reached the upper levels, the alarm was raised. The Council had realized what was happening. The hallways became a war zone. Samara hacked security turrets to turn them against their own soldiers. Zaelthera led the charge, his alien blade carving through Concordat enforcers with ruthless precision. Carter held the line, leading the human strike team as they cut a bloody path toward the core relay. The Concordat unleashed everything. Bioweapon drones, gravity mines, AI-controlled sentinels, but the team pressed forward, fighting like devils, fueled by the knowledge that this was humanity's best, and possibly only, chance at victory. #### the broadcast that shattered an empire. Finally, they reached the core relay chamber, a vast, cathedral-like control room, its walls pulsing with holographic data streams. Samara sprinted to the main console and inserted the stolen data disk. The system resisted. Concordat AI firewalls tried to shut them out. The transmission was blocked. Then Carter saw it, ****, a manual override switch on the far side of the room, ****. The problem? It was heavily exposed, crossing that distance meant certain death. Carter didn't hesitate. He ran. Blaster fire tore through the air around him. Alarms screamed. Concordat war drones descended from the ceiling. But Carter kept moving, dodging, weaving, pushing through pain until he slammed his fist onto the override panel. The system went dark for a second. Then the broadcast went live. Across the galaxy, on every Concordat-controlled world, every ship, every colony, ****, the truth exploded into the public consciousness, ****. Secret war crimes. Rebellions already underway. The cracks in the Empire's foundation. And then came Carter's voice, transmitted to trillions of beings across the stars. The Concordat is dying. Their rule is built on fear. But today, we stand together. Humanity may have been the first to fight back, but we are not the last. Rise up. Take your freedom. The Concordat's greatest weapon had just become humanity's greatest victory. #### the fall begins. Outside, the skies of Celestra Prime erupted in chaos. Rebellious forces hidden within the Empire struck at the heart of Concordat control. Civil war broke out in real time. Concordat fleets began fracturing, some ships turning on each other, others abandoning the fight altogether. The High Council panicked. Their leaders fled the spire, trying to escape the inevitable. But there was no escape. The empire they had spent thousands of years building was now crumbling beneath them. Samara turned to Carter, breathing heavily. "We did it." Carter nodded, his face grim. This was just the first domino. Humanity had won the battle. But the war for the galaxy had just begun. The transmission had been sent. The truth was no longer buried under Concordat lies, ****, it was everywhere ****. Across the galaxy, worlds that had once lived in fear of the Concordat now stood at the edge of revolution. Some hesitated, unwilling to risk their fragile security. Others, fueled by years of oppression, immediately rose in defiance. But for humanity, there was no time to celebrate. Carter, Samara, and Zaelthera stood in the shattered remains of the core relay chamber, their mission complete but their escape far from guaranteed. The spire was in chaos, alarms blaring as Concordat forces scrambled to restore control. Zaelthera checked his wrist console. The planetary defense grid is still active. We need an extraction plan. Carter turned to Samara. Tell me we've got a way out of here. She smirked. We don't. But I can make one. ### burning the bridge. The Galactic Spire was the backbone of Concordat rule. If it remained intact, the Council might still have a chance to regain control. The military could regroup. The propaganda machine could churn out lies. Samara's solution was simple: take the whole thing down. She accessed the Spire's central energy core, a fusion reactor capable of powering an entire fleet. If overloaded, the resulting explosion would cripple Celestra Prime's planetary defenses. We light this place up, she said, and the free worlds won't just rise, they'll have a clear shot at Concordat strongholds. Zaelthera's reptilian eyes narrowed. You're talking about leveling an entire city. Carter's expression was grim. You think they'd hesitate to do the same to us? Zaelthera considered, then let out a deep, rumbling growl. Let's burn it down. ### the Great Collapse. The team fought their way to the reactor core, battling through elite Concordat enforcers determined to stop them. The halls trembled as explosions rocked the spire, evidence that other factions within the Empire were already turning against their masters. Samara hacked into the system, bypassing the safety locks, setting the reactor to overload. 10 minutes until detonation. 9. Carter's communicator crackled. Valiant to Carter, what the hell did you just do? It was the UTD fleet, what was left of it, led by the T.S. Valiant, now entering Celestra Prime's orbit. Reinforcements had arrived. 7 minutes. Samara wiped sweat from her brow. We need a ride, now. Zaelthera activated his communicator. Vigilance Eternal, prepare for emergency extraction. The stolen Concordat vessel, still under his command, began its descent. 5 minutes. The team raced to the spire's upper levels, fighting through Concordat soldiers who refused to accept reality. Even as their empire crumbled, some would rather die than surrender. 3 minutes. The Vigilance Eternal appeared in the sky, its engines roaring as it hovered over the spire's burning ruins. Ropes dropped. The team leaped, grabbing hold as the ship ascended. As they climbed aboard, Carter looked down. 1 minute. A brilliant light erupted from the heart of the spire, a shockwave tearing through Celestra Prime's capital. Towers collapsed. Entire blocks of government infrastructure were reduced to rubble. The planetary defense grid, once thought impenetrable, *** flickered and died ***. The Concordat's capital had fallen. ### the rebellion spreads. With the spire's destruction, the effect was instantaneous. The United Terran Directorate, once outnumbered and outgunned, suddenly found itself at the head of a massive galactic insurrection. On occupied worlds, planetary governors fled or were executed by their own citizens. On Concordat fleet command ships, officers mutinied against their superiors. On distant colonies, slave races took up arms, fighting for the first time in centuries. And in the heart of the chaos, the Concordat High Council sent a desperate transmission. All forces, regroup at the homeworld. The war is not over. ### the final war begins. Carter stood on the bridge of the Vigilance Eternal, watching the fallout unfold. Humanity had not just survived, they had changed the balance of power forever. But he knew the fight wasn't over. The Concordat still had vast fleets, hidden weapons, and leaders too arrogant to surrender. They would retreat to their homeworld, gather what remained of their empire, and prepare for a final, desperate stand. Samara leaned against the console, exhaling. So, what now? Carter's eyes burned with determination. Now? We finish this. The Concordat had been shattered, but the homeworld of Celestra remained their last bastion of power. It was a place that had never fallen, protected by an impenetrable defense grid, an elite military still loyal to the High Council, and undying arrogance. Yet now, with the rebellion growing stronger every day, Carter knew the final battle was coming, there was no turning back. Humanity had made it this far. The galaxy's future depended on how they would finish what had been started. In the briefing room of the Vigilance Eternal, Carter, Samara, Zaelthera, and a team of human and alien revolutionaries prepared for the final assault. On the display before them, the glowing image of Celestra spun slowly, its defenses highlighted in red. The High Council had withdrawn to the Citadel of Eternity, a fortress located in the heart of the planet's largest city, surrounded by miles of automated shields and defense turrets. "If we want to end this, we need to hit the Citadel and take the High Council alive," Carter said. His voice was steady, but beneath it, there was a flicker of anxiety. He knew they could destroy the Concordat, ***, but the consequences of such an attack could fracture the rebellion, ***. Samara's fingers tapped across the table's edge. The Citadel is surrounded by the most advanced weaponry in the galaxy. Even with the fleet backing us, a full-scale assault would be suicide. Zaelthera let out a low, reptilian chuckle. "Then let's make sure it isn't an assault. Let's make it a surprise. #### the infiltration of Celestra." The final plan was simple, but incredibly risky. The Vigilance Eternal would act as the spearhead, drawing the Concordat's attention while a small, elite force, led by Carter and Samara, would infiltrate the Citadel through an old underground network of tunnels hidden beneath the city. They would enter the heart of the enemy's stronghold, sabotage its internal defenses, and capture the Council's leaders. It would be their last chance to negotiate the Concordat's surrender and bring peace to the galaxy. But no one believed that would happen. The truth was, the Concordat would rather burn than bend the knee. #### under the surface. As they descended beneath Celestra Prime's surface, the team navigated the ancient tunnels, ***, long forgotten by most, but still maintained by a few loyal Concordat engineers ***. The walls were coated with layers of energy-dampening technology that blocked scanners and made it impossible to detect their movement. They were deep beneath enemy lines, surrounded by endless miles of dirt and rock, with only the faintest hum of the surface world above. Their radios crackled with static, but there was no turning back. They had committed to this mission. Failure wasn't an option. After hours of silent, tense movement, they reached the entrance to the Citadel's security vaults. The team spread out, waiting for Carter's signal. Samara crouched near the control panel, her fingers dancing over the codes she'd learned from years of infiltrating Concordat systems. "We're in," she whispered. The door slid open, and they entered, weapons raised, but the room was empty, just an ordinary corridor, leading them deeper into the heart of the Citadel. Suddenly, the ground shook beneath them. Alarms blared. The Concordat had discovered their intrusion. #### a race against time. The team sprinted through the corridors, moving quickly but quietly as blasts echoed in the distance. Their goal was simple: capture the High Council before they could escape, but the deeper they went, the more dangerous it became. The Concordat deployed their most elite enforcers, **** biomechanical soldiers **** designed to hunt down insurgents in close quarters. They were faster, stronger, and more brutal than anything the human team had faced. They were designed to kill without hesitation. Zaelthera, his claws gleaming in the dim light, turned to Carter. "We're close. This is where the real fight begins." Carter's grip tightened around his blaster. "We get in, we get them alive. We don't leave anyone behind." Samara moved ahead, her face grim. "No one ever told us we'd make it out alive." Just then, the corridor ahead of them exploded in a violent hail of fire. A huge wall of automated defenses had been activated, and soldiers poured out from hidden alcoves. The battle had begun. #### the final standoff. The team was outnumbered, but they weren't unprepared. Each soldier had been trained in close-quarters combat, using alien technology and guerrilla tactics to outsmart their foes. Samara hacked into the Citadel's systems, disrupting internal defenses and scrambling the battlefield's targeting systems. Zaelthera tore through the enemy ranks, his savage combat skills ensuring their survival. Carter, ever the leader, guided his team with military precision, knowing that one misstep could mean the end of everything they had worked for. But time was running out. The Citadel was on lockdown. The High Council had already prepared their escape plan, and their shuttle was waiting. They would rather die than fall into the hands of their enemies. With the final breach of the Council's inner sanctum, Carter and Samara found themselves face to face with the High Council. The remaining leaders of the Concordat, though shaking with fear, refused to surrender. They had one final card to play, ***, a doomsday device capable of destroying the entire planet ***. Samara's eyes narrowed as she saw the weapon. No one else dies today. Carter turned to her, his voice low. No matter what happens, we finish this. The tension in the air was thick as Carter, Samara, Zaelthera, and their team faced down the remaining leaders of the Concordat High Council in the heart of the Citadel. The room was cold, metallic, and filled with the hum of the doomsday device pulsing ominously at the center. The council members, once the untouchable elites of the galaxy, stood before them, their arrogance shattered. But their pride had not broken. Instead, they'd activated the most dangerous weapon at their disposal, a planetary annihilation device, set to wipe out Celestra Prime and take everything with it. You think you've won? One of the council members, a tall, silver-haired alien named High Counselor Varen, sneered at Carter. You are nothing but insects, buzzing around the remnants of a broken empire. This world is ours. And when it burns, so will your revolution. Carter's voice was cold. You're wrong. This war ends now. Samara stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the massive console that controlled the doomsday device. We don't want to destroy this world. But we will if we have to. The High Counselor's lips curled into a cruel smile. You can't stop it. You're too late. As if on cue, the countdown began. 5 minutes to detonation. The room shook as the ground beneath them trembled with the weight of the weapon's activation. ####a battle of minds and will. Carter knew that the only way to stop the destruction was to disable the device manually. The only problem? The device was housed in the most fortified section of the Citadel, surrounded by a dozen elite Concordat soldiers, all of whom were prepared to die for the cause. Carter looked to Samara, then Zaelthera. We need to get to that control room now. Disrupt their command structure, anything that buys us time. Zaelthera gave a low growl. We'll make it. But as they raced toward the control room, they encountered the final line of defense. Concordat enforcers, enhanced with cybernetic upgrades beyond anything the team had faced before, charged at them from every direction. Samara took the lead, her nimble form weaving in and out of the enemy's fire. She activated a gravitational pulse that temporarily disabled the enforcers' targeting systems, buying them a few precious seconds to move forward. Meanwhile, Carter and Zaelthera cut a brutal path through the opposition. Their enemies were fierce, but the rebellion had given them something the Concordat couldn't take away: hope. Hope that they could still turn the tide. Hope that the galaxy could be free. Carter's voice was steady as he moved forward. We're almost there. The countdown ticked on. 3 minutes. #### the final confrontation. They reached the control room just as the High Counselor and his surviving officers activated a last-ditch defense, ***, a series of automated drones, brimming with enough firepower to level a city block, ***. Carter, Samara, and Zaelthera dove behind cover as the drones opened fire. Explosions shook the chamber, and the smell of burning metal filled the air. The Vigilance Eternal, still in orbit, could only provide limited air support due to the planet's intense anti-air defenses. But there was no more room for mistakes. Samara, ever resourceful, hacked into the drone's central command, reprogramming their targeting systems. The drones began firing at their own troops, creating chaos among the Council's ranks. 2 minutes. Zaelthera pushed forward, his sword slicing through the last of the enforcers guarding the console. Carter followed, his blaster set to maximum as he cleared the room of any remaining threats. At last, they reached the central console. Samara plugged into the terminal, fingers flying across the keys as she worked to override the Doomsday device's countdown. Come on, she muttered under her breath. The High Counselor, bloodied but still defiant, glared at them from across the room. You think you've won, but the galaxy is already in ruins. You're nothing but a blip in the tide of history. Carter didn't hesitate. History is what we make of it. With one final push, Samara's hands flew over the console and, ***, she disabled the countdown, ***, the room fell silent for a heartbeat. Then the screen blinked, the countdown frozen at 1 minute. The room erupted into chaos as the High Counselor made a final, desperate charge for a hidden weapon, but Zaelthera was too fast. With a swift motion, he struck, disarming the leader and bringing him to his knees. The war was over. #### the rebirth of the galaxy. The Vigilance Eternal returned to the surface with reinforcements, securing the Citadel and helping the rebels take the city. The Doomsday device was dismantled, the High Counselor taken into custody, and the remnants of the Concordat scattered to the winds. In the aftermath, the galaxy began to rebuild. The once great empire that had held trillions in its grip was no more. New alliances were forged between human and alien races, and the galaxy's oppressed rose to power. Carter, Samara, Zaelthera, and their team stood together as heroes, but they knew that this was just the beginning. The work of uniting the galaxy was far from over. They had won the battle, but the real challenge was to ensure the future remained free. As Carter gazed out over the horizon of Celestra Prime, he knew one thing for certain. Humanity had proven that even against impossible odds, the spirit of freedom would always find a way to triumph. The age of the Concordat was over. The age of the free worlds had begun. And humanity had led the way.